Shalom Vayakhel Parah. This week is really Shalom Parah. Last week we said it by mistake. My apologies. I realized as soon as I finished the shir that just by the amount of weeks left till Pesach, 3 weeks till Pesach. If you could believe that, I don't mean to alarm anyone, to scare anyone that has to clean for Pesach, whatever. But L'maisa, there's only 3 weeks left. And we have a lot to learn, a lot of halachas to learn, a lot of things to do, to accomplish before the holy Yom Tov of Pesach. Another interesting thing about this week, which we should definitely take note of, is that usually when it's not a leap year in the Hebrew, in the Jewish calendar, so the Parshios of Vayakhel Pekudei are together. But this year, even though it's a Shana Pshuta, it's a regular year, and it's not a leap year, still the Parshios of Vayakhel and Pekudei are separate. And the reason for that is pretty simple, that because Erev Pesach is Shabbos, we need that extra week, we need that extra Parsha between Purim and Pesach, so we separate the Parshios. And, okay, that's pretty much that reason. Now we can get into talking about the Parsha a little bit. And when one learns through the Parshios of these weeks, it should seem pretty unbelievable. Anybody who learns, who's Mavasedra, you learn through these Parshas, how many times the Torah repeats all the details of the Mishkan. Truma, Tzaveh, Kisisa, Vayakhel, Pekudei. 5 Parshios, and sometimes multiple times in each of those Parshios, the Torah keeps repeating the commandment, when they fulfilled the mitzvah, how they did the mitzvah, who did the mitzvah, who built the Mishkan, who was commanded, who brought the money, who donated for the Mishkan. So many different angles, so many different things. It says it over and over. And the details, unbelievable how many details, and especially since we all know and we all believe that every single letter in the Torah is important, it's necessary, and it's Kodesh Kodashim. Every single letter in the Torah, and many times we learn in Gemara, we make drashas, many times we learn many halachas just from one letter in the Torah. We want to know, why is there a hey at the beginning of this word, a hey at the end of the word? Why S.S.S, all these things, a vav, extra vav, so many drushes, so many block Gemara are based on an extra letter, on things that we darshan, things that we want to darshan. And yet, over here, why here, the Torah seemingly repeats the parsha of the Mishkan a few times and with such brevity and over again, entire parshiyos. Forget about one letter. Forget about words. We're talking about entire parshiyos in the Torah. And the same type of question could actually be asked about the beginning of our parsha. Beginning of our parsha says, Vayakhel Moshe, Moshe Rabbeinu got everybody together. And what happens? The first thing that Moshe Rabbeinu talked about, Sheishes Yomim, 6 days you should do malacha. Uvayom HaShvi'i, on the 7th day of the week, you rest. 7th day of the week is Shabbos. So the question is, very similarly, once again, in Parshas Yisroi, we had Aseres HaDibros, Zochar Shem Shabbos L'Kadshoy. Last week in the Parsha of Shamru B'nei Yisrael Sa Shabbos, we talked about Shabbos, and then once again comes the Torah at the beginning of Parshas Vayakhel, and the Torah right away starts speaking about Shabbos again. So Rashi tells us that the reason we mentioned Shabbos over here before, the reason Shabbos is mentioned before the tzivoy of the Mishkan is to teach us a lesson, a lesson that what? That the Meleches HaMishkan are not Doiches Shabbos. You don't do Meleches HaMishkan on Shabbos, although some Karbanos we know were brought on Shabbos, but the Meleches HaMishkan, the work from the Mishkan, is not Doiches Shabbos. So, but really the question still remains. We could really learn that from a remez or a drasha from the word, from a drasha in the Torah, or hinting to that in the Torah, that we shouldn't be. The Torah could have alluded to the fact that we build a Mishkan, but we don't build it on Shabbos. Why does the Torah repeat the entire commandment of keeping Shabbos once again? As we mentioned, it was already said a few times. So the Svarim HaKadoshim brought down in the Nesivos Shalom, they explain like this, and the Nesivos Shalom says, he says it many times really, that the tachlis, the reason of the entire Torah and all the mitzvahs is really all to one goal. One thing, the entire Torah points to one thing, and that's the mitzvah of Uvoy Sidba. That we want to be, a Yid should be close to Hashem. And every one of the Taryag mitzvahs is another road, is another way, is another piece of advice to come closer to Hashem. So we want to be connected to Hashem. And the question, of course, is how does a human being ever raise themselves up to that place where you can connect to Hashem? What shaykhs do we have, Kaviyachol, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So there's a mitzvah of Avoy Sidbak. We should cleave to Hashem. We should be close to Hashem, but we're human beings, and Hashem is Hashem. How do we get there? We need a little bit of advice. We need some adracha. We need to know how to get there. The answer is, say the Svarim HaKadoshim brought down in Nesivos Shalom, the way to do it is through Kedoshim Tiyu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu we know is Kadosh. The ultimate Kedusha is a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kedusha is what enables a person to connect to Hashem. When we are more Kadosh, when we accept and have more Kedusha on ourselves, then it allows us to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the Taryag mitzvahs. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the ultimate epitome of Kedusha, and each time we do one of the Taryag mitzvahs, how do we come closer to Hashem? Because we bring more Kedusha on ourselves. And that's why the Torah speaks about Kedusha multiple times before Kabbalah SaTorah. We know, B'yatem tiyu mamleches koyanim v'goy kadosh. Before we accept, before we have the Torah, we have to understand that Kedusha encompasses not just staying away from things that are usur. For that, there's Isurim in the Torah. What Kedusha really means for every one of us is that Kedusha includes how we act and how we behave with the things that are technically mutter. And that's what really brings Kedusha on a person. Of course, a person doing mitzvahs and staying away from Isurim of the Torah makes you more of a holy Jew. But the way you act with the things that are mutter, that it's mutter to eat, it's mutter to do things, it's mutter to speak, it's mutter to do many, many different things that we do. But how do you act with that heter? Sometimes a person could be no Rishus HaTorah. Oh, the Torah, show me, everybody, show me in the Shulchan Aruch where it's usur. It's not necessarily usur, but a Yid doesn't behave that way. That's what Kedoshim, Kadesh Atzmacha, B'muter Lach. We have to have more Kedusha. A Yid speaks, a Goy speaks. A Yid eats, a Goy eats. But do we eat the same way? Do we speak the same way? A Yid is parents, a Goy is parent. Do we treat our parents the same way as a Goy? Avadanish. Kedoshim Tiyu tells us, Kadesh Atzmacha B'muter Lach. And the Shabbos says in the Nesivos Shalom, the Shabbos is a power plant of Mikora Kedusha. You want the ultimate way of reaching HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you use the Shabbos. You treat the Shabbos right. You are Mekabel Shabbos. You do the mitzvahs of Shabbos. You have Shabbos in your life, and that is the Mikora Kedusha. That gives you the most Kedusha. As the Reishis Chachma tells us on the pasuk of Vayivorech Elokim es Yom HaShvi'i. What are the next words? Vayikadesh Oisai. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu blessed the seventh day. Vayikadesh Oisai. That Shabbos inherently has Kedusha. So if we want to have Kedusha, and we want to get to that Uboy Sidba, we want to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shabbos is the wellspring of Kedusha for everything that is holy. And the same thing can also be said about the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash. The Mishkan, the Beis HaMikdash were there for that reason. They're a conduit to a Kedusha. It's a way, it's a path for us to be more Kadosh, to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just like by Shabbos it says, Vayivarech Elokim es Yom HaShvi'i Vayikadesh Oisai. What do we call the Mishkan? The Torah tells us, the Asuli Mikdash, to make for yourself that something that is holy to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the tachlis and the goal for every Jew is to make yourself, to make personally, you should become a mini mikdash. What does it mean to be a mini mikdash? Where every taiva in the world is really like a maisa behema, going through the motions. Every taiva in the world ultimately should repulse a person if it is not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to do. And that is how we connect to Hashem, with Kedusha of Shabbos and Kedusha of the Beis HaMikdash. So where does Parshas Vayakhel come in? And then we can answer our questions also. Parshas Vayakhel, the Torah tells us, Klal Yisrael had just done the Chet HaEgel. It was an unbelievably low time for Klal Yisrael. However, it happened, Klal Yisrael did the Chet HaEgel. Parshas Vayakhel takes place right after Yom Kippur, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu had just forgiven the Bnei Yisrael. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgave Bnei Yisrael, that we got Mechila, Slicha, and Kapara from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, now HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us advice. Okay, I forgave you, but now I need to give you advice on how to reconnect. How do you come back? How do you reconnect to Hashem? So the parsha goes right into saying the mitzvah of Shabbos again. Einachanami, we said the mitzvah of Shabbos in the Aseret HaDibroi, and in last week's parsha. But now the Torah is giving us advice. You got a kapara for the Chet HaEgel. This is how you connect to Hashem, by keeping Shabbos, by respecting the Shabbos, by honoring the Shabbos, by delighting in the Shabbos, and not doing malacha on the Shabbos. First Shabbos, says the Torah, even before the Kedusha of the Mishkan. But the next Eitzah after Shabbos is to build that Mishkan of Kedusha, to sacrifice your Gashmias, to lead your life in a way of Kedusha, to sacrifice your Gashmias for Hashem, to make a place for Hashem, b'shochanti b'soicham. You want to know how you come back close to Hashem? Make a place, your house, your office, your shul, your place around your friends, around your family, every person's little mini mishkan, b'shochanti b'soicham. Make a place of Kedusha where HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be close to you, where you can be, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is proud to be with you. And that's why the Torah keeps repeating these lessons. The Torah, we said 5 long parshiyos, when every letter of the Torah is Kadosh, every letter of the Torah is Kodesh Kodashim. But the Torah tells us, I'm teaching you a lesson here, over and over again for 5 parshiyos at length, about a Mishkan, because that's the way to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then when we come to our parsha, the Torah tells us that's the lesson. Shabbos and the Mishkan are the biggest advice, how important it is, Shabbos and Kedusha, to our growing in Ruchnias, to our getting closer to Hashem. So now we understand why we have to repeat it. Something which is extremely important, something which is vital, something which our lives depend on it. Our whole life is about the Torah. Kabbalah HaTorah, what is the Torah? That we should be Mamleches Kohanim, a Goy Kodesh. How are we a Goy Kodesh? Through the mitzvahs that are spoken about at great length of Shabbos and the Mishkan.